The following audio is via a Skype call.
Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and guests unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness. Get ready to find your free will from your roots in the stars.
Hello, I'm Sue Rose Minahan. Tonight, for the Talk Cosmos program, the date is November 3rd, 2018, and the subject generally, this overspanning subject, continues with Scorpio, the archetype of Scorpio, and the archetype involves the sign itself, Scorpio, the 8th house, which is the 8th house of the 12 in the horoscope, Pluto, which technically is what evolutionary astrologers would still consider to be the influential ruling planet of Scorpio, and for traditional astrologers, Mars. And also there's the scorpion, the eagle, the snake, many elements. Tonight's subject in this vast, really powerful archetype is unveiling death's mask, because Scorpio really does have to do about life and death in so many forms. And I will immediately begin by introducing our guest, who is Suzie Kerr-Wright, an astrologer, psychic medium, a Reiki master, teacher, and certified life coach. Suzie blends intuitive talents, knowledgeable of astrology, spirit, and her metaphysical world began as a child, enamored with astrology and tarot. So blending her intuitive talents, knowledge of astrology, spirit communication, and life coaching, she creates the roadmap to help you understand your potential to live highest and best life. Suzie Kerr-Wright has studied at the prestigious Arthur Findlay College of Psychic Sciences in England, is a graduate of Dale Carnegie, and has a PhD in Human Resources. In Tennessee, she is a weekly astrologer on the air for WSCA FM radio. That's the call numbers. And is a regular guest on the Today in Nashville. And has written astrology columns and articles for Good Housekeeping, Cosmopolitan, Elle, Bustle, Romper, Brides Magazine, and others. She's very dynamic and does theatric, I think, work too. But at any rate, and also you can find Suzie on the guest on Talk Cosmos. If you go to Talk Cosmos, we have all the guests. They give their emails, their websites, so you can get in contact. And hi, Suzie. We'll just begin.
Hi, Sue. I am so excited. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I've been looking forward to this for so long. When did I meet you? When was Chicago? It was forever ago.
It was United Astrology Conference back in May. Huge event.
May.
Yeah, we really.
Yeah.
About Scorpio, we've talked at length, and I think part of it was that you immediately thought that you would bring up some of the ideas of demystifying the whole death process. So what was on your mind?
Well, my kind of mission through all of the metaphysical tools that I use and the different modalities that I have is always to take the mystery and the fear out of things for people, And so that's, when and this is the big taboo. This is it. This is death that we're talking about now. And but there's so much more to explore in the context of that word. The dictionary definition is it's a permanent ending, but is it really?
Yes.
And so, and there are many phases of death or many types of deaths that we can experience in life. And, there's the death of the ego. There's the physical death. There's the death of ideas or ideals that we have. There's emotional death, spiritual death. We equate the many losses and things that we experience in our lives to death, like the death of a marriage or the death of a close relationship, or even, how people say, you're dead to me, it's like, so when something ceases to be integral in our lives, we sometimes equate it to the concept of like the physical death. And demystifying death is really just reframing what that process of transformation looks like. It's removing the fear and walking into the shadow and kind of looking death squarely in the face and realizing that, whether it's physical death or not, well, in my world, because I'm a medium, I know there is life beyond physical. So pretty much anything else is like, not as it's not permanent either. So, but looking it in the face reminds me, I got that vision of, remember that movie Moana?
Yes.
At the end, she just walks right up to the monster, and she's like, I know who you are, and when we can get to that level of bravery in our lives and that level of confidence in knowing who we are, it's like we can, anything is possible, and death becomes so much less powerful, that the concept
of overcoming us. This is really very strong, because abandonment and that pain, that, especially if it's when one's young, and then it triggers, these emotions. I was reading too about in the Buddhist faith that looking at emotions and realizing that rather than the external that seems to cause our problems, but really going into the fact that this is noticing those emotions, and that it distances one from their sense of is it true? Is this emotion have to be true? Because there are reasons. There is pain in this world, but this.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not trying to be light of any of this either.
No,
right? Of course not. But there is this other thing of the impermanence and the fact that there's life beyond. There is life beyond, just as you were in so many ways, and this transmuting of phases, or even using love as a big factor of bridging beyond with the loss, or I am thinking of there's physical deaths, but again, going back to the dictionary, which I think that's pretty much what it's picking up on, but all these other internal, because even with a physical death of somebody, there's so many other parts of us that need to be resurrected in some way, in a new fashion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is I say just a process, but it's a painful process. I mean, nobody gets out of this world alive, and nobody gets to go through life without feeling, losses and grief and pain and all of that. But we've just, as humans, like, or at least, in general, we've created such a terrifying image of what death can be. I mean, it's amazing, because I use tarot also in my readings a lot of times, and that death card will come up, and I mean, the people's faces are just, they're horrified, they're terrified, and and it actually has, it's funny, there's actually so much astrological symbolism in the tarot. There's so many connections. And the death card in tarot, this is so interesting, because the process of going through these deaths means having to acknowledge something and having to release something, in order, because it's something that isn't working for us anymore. Right. It's a mask, and it's like what we think we see in front of us that's seemingly impossible to overcome or too difficult to walk through it's 10 feet tall and paper thin. That's what our fears are. And so, in the tarot, it's so interesting, because the death card is preceded by the Hanged Man, which is about seeing things from a view from your higher self rather than from an ego place. So first we begin like the shift the willingness to see things a little differently, then we start to reframe our views and step out of our limitations, and or at least we're aware of them. And the Spiritual Tarot book, I love this book. It's wonderful. Says death promises rebirth and renewal following the disintegration and abandonment of those things that are no longer useful to you. So in the death card, you see this, this imposing skeleton, yellow, gold or yellow skeleton faced by like 4 figures. And the 4 figures are just aspects of ourselves. So there's the wounded or possibly dead king underneath this horse. That's the personality. There's a child that represents our innocence. There's a maiden that represents our purity, and a priest that represents our spiritual beliefs. And it's no accident either that it's followed by the Temperance card, which represents coming back to balance and flow, and the Zen concept of living is then related to the higher self in action. So basically, if you think about it astrologically, there's your 8th and 9th house right there. you know and actually throw the 7th in there too for the Hanged Man. It's like, wow, how do we get to see where our limitations are or where our fears are? It's through interactions with other people mostly, right? And then so 7th house. So 8th house is where the Pluto Scorpio house. We go through the transformation, and then we get to the 9th house, which is our spiritual connection, our spiritual belief, and we begin working on what works for us.
Expanding those horizons. It's so very true. Integral process, because what we have in the 7th, and they do begin to interrelate. Well, in fact, life interrelates. So it's so great as we progress in these talks to keep bringing back the fact that one kind of lends itself to the next, because it's with those relationships, it's that mirror of seeing projections and ourself and contrasts but if we have ourself, in fact, Kabbalah begins. I like the study of Kabbalah, and I'm not a huge master of it by any means, but I'm fascinated. I mean, it really pulls in a lot of information, and it begins, instead of in Aries, the horoscope begins in Libra, because it is the other. And I was reading in Buddha too how it's that whole culture of Tibet wants to think of the other person, that this holistic sense, and that we exchange and share our strengths in exchange for power, to empower each other, which is not exactly feeding into the sense of what you were saying about the different fears and growths of ourselves. But we do have these many parts of us. There's so many layers, as we had talked about before, like that takes a lot of work. It takes.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, we're, especially right now, we're like digging and digging and digging deeper and deeper, with this Venus retrograde, and and we're. And the interesting thing is we're actually being the gift of cleansing, cleaning, and releasing. But so many are, it doesn't feel all warm and fuzzy.
No.
Any Pluto transit, where Pluto is in your chart is where you're always undergoing some sort of transformation. But, when you've got Pluto doing what it's doing and Saturn lining up with it now, I mean, there's so much going on that this particular, Venus, Venus retrograde is just, it's monstrous. And not only that, it's ending that 8-year cycle, that Venus cycle. And so that started back in 2010. So right now, literally right now, we are being given the opportunity to close out a very painful emotional cycle and look at things that we've been putting off, in some cases a lifetime, and, when you said this, when I was speaking to you earlier, it's like, I don't want to steal your thunder, but I thought it was such a great line. You said Scorpio wants to live, not die. Pluto wants us to live and not die. And that's important to remember. These transits can feel so painful and so, it just so you can't see the forest for the trees. But when you come out on the other side, it's, oh God, you can't even fathom the rewards,
Yeah, the motivation and intention, so true to remember, is for that releasing of what isn't working, what is no longer giving us life support. And sometimes it's, I'm thinking as we purge and toss things away, sometimes it's very evident, and other times it's like there's a heaviness to it because just of the weight of it and everything that it represented. And for different individuals, it's probably easier to just toss or let go. And others of us, it's more of a choice. But, with that, it all builds that values. And, of course, Venus, you were just bringing up about the Venus cycle. Venus is in Scorpio, just to remind our audience. It is in a Scorpio Venus point, meaning that in the cycle of Venus, it goes in 8 years, it connects with the sun 5 times, and it makes a beautiful star. It's one of the most, if you look at the cycle, it's absolutely stunning. There's many ways to look at the Venus star cycle. Ariel Gutman has a wonderful book about it and talks at great lengths. But at any rate, every 8 years it returns, and that's what you're speaking of. So it's really a good point to refer. And that the degrees for those that happen to be concerned about that are early degrees. That's 2 or 3 degrees Scorpio, and it was just like last week. And actually, because it's retrograde, meaning that that's apparent from our view, it's just left Scorpio going back into Venus. Back into Libra. Yeah, which is a lot of reassessment of relationships, and not maybe as an intense, but still really. But the life source, like I'm bringing it back to what you were saying, and what we were talking about, wanting the motivation is how is this going to support us with life?
Yeah, how? You tell me, sister. I have 5 degrees Scorpio sun. So, no, I'm just kidding.
Well,
one of the things that I find about Pluto transits, and I haven't actually done any like super research on it. There's a couple of things here that I've noticed. Okay, one of the things about Scorpio, about like intense Pluto transits or things in Scorpio energy, is that there seems to be, I almost want to say, it's almost like there's like the little carrot on the stick underneath, way underneath, because everything about Pluto and Scorpio is underneath. It's it's a subconscious, unconscious, however you want to look at it. And there always seems, I find, maybe I'm wrong, I have Sag rising, so I tend to exaggerate and I tend to only see things from my perspective. But
it's a good one.
It seems like people that go through Pluto transits are, definitely brought to their knees, but they will find it's like they find that sliver of hope somewhere in there. They tend to find that, they tend to know that it's there, whether they verbalize it or not. With like a Saturn transit, honestly, if I think about it, I've seen more people try and check out during a tough Saturn transit than a Pluto transit, because Pluto is so deep, but it also activates that higher self that knows there's hope, there's something better coming, hang on.
Well, it is a compost. It's composting. So when you think about it, in going back to that idea, like in the earth and underneath, that's where the roots grow. So that really sustains a life, and even again and again, it's this whole idea that yes, through a death of any fashion, there is life beyond. There's either life beyond for the survivors. Let's say for a physical death of somebody that you love. I just had somebody that I knew very well, then close to me, that passed. And it's become really relevant. Well, it's really, it was very apropos for this talk, I have to say, that, the timing as far as feeding me energy. And that's what life does. It feeds you renewed energy in another way, because I was realizing that, again, my whole understanding of various deaths that I've experienced is that the love that was experienced manifests. It has that capacity to expand, because love isn't qualified. It's only maybe non-experienced, as great as it can be. And so it's a very empowering, because there's either love or fear. And the fear part that we've been bringing up is what we don't know, and we imagine, and I mean there's all these, or maybe experiences, and it's just a resistance, because Scorpio is a
stubborn.
Well, it's fixed. It's a fixed water sign. They say it's like ice, so it takes a little time to thaw. It's like digging down there.
It can be very stagnant water at times. Yes, it can be, and it just festers, and Scorpio energy can get very, very stuck.
That carrot that you're speaking of is really important, because there is a promise of of transmuting from just the physical to the spirit. There really is. It's like you have to, in order to comprehend it, you need to go into the spirit. If you go through so many of the archetypes, of course, involve physical and spirit. And right now, everything about the astrology chart is just pushing it in our face. Because,
oh my gosh, yeah.
Because, speaking astrologically, okay, we've had Venus, which is in Scorpio, which has done this, long 8-month cycle. It's 40 days in one sign, but it's been a long process. And, or am I getting it mixed up with Mars? Because we've gone through so many retrogrades. But it's a 40-day cycle with Venus. And the point is that, the planets, we have Uranus, which is in Taurus, and Venus rules 2 signs. It rules, that's ruled by Venus. So then we're looking at Venus, and it's squaring the nodes, and you're asked people saying, what are the nodes? Well, the nodes are these points of the intersection between Venus intersecting the orbit of the Earth going around the sun. Yeah.
You're talking about the moon's nodes.
Yeah, those are the moon nodes. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so right.
Which were ticked off back at the these degrees are close to them.
Yeah, they're all zero.
Were ticked off back at the eclipse. There's a lot going on, guys. There
is. And I'm sorry if
a lot.
if for those people that aren't astrologers, because I know there really are. There's a huge, vast, audience here of various information. But just to let people, the non-people astrologers, know there's a lot of intensities. And yes, we could go down and analyze exactly how, but there are carrots. There are reasons to release.
Yeah. And and it's funny, I went to my dear friend Kim Rogers Gallagher. I don't know if you've read her books, The Light Side, Astrology for the Light Side of the Brain, Astrology for the Light Side of the Future. She personalizes the planets, and God, I met her decades ago. And she's Sag with Aquarius moon, and I have Sag rising Aquarius moon, so we were like instant sisters. Love her to pieces. But she mentioned in her book that we also have to remember something really important. Like, we're talking about all of these deaths and these deaths of ideas, and the pain that goes with it in the process. And I do have some things at the end that I can offer to help you go through this, and just kind of life in general, but specifically if you're feeling that heavy Plutonian Scorpio kind of energy right now. Or having one of those tough transits. But she said that, remember that the parts of you that you're looking at, the shadow side that we're really faced with right now, are limitations. You can call them that, you can call them whatever, but it's the stuff that we don't like about ourselves, because this is deep, deep, deep stuff. It isn't evil. And she says it's power hungry, it's ruthless, it's intense. Pluto is all or nothing. But he has X-ray vision, and he has a plan. And that's where I think, underneath that little carrot that I was, talking about. And she said, when you're dealing, basically when you're dealing with Mr. Death, you have to learn to understand the importance of process.
Yes.
It's all about process. These Pluto transits are not things that you go through. Pluto transits Scorpio, heavy Scorpio energy, whatever it is you're experiencing, and they don't happen overnight. And that's probably one of the most frustrating things as an astrologer, to try and coach somebody and counsel somebody through that process and help them understand that, because they come in with this, my job really is managing people's expectations. And that's what I do. I'm an astrologer and psychic medium, but that's what I do. But they want to know, when's it going to end? And it's like, well, when you're going to let go, And it was interesting, though. There was this one piece that I wanted to share, and it's really kind of a little left of what we're talking about. But I when I was, making notes about what she had said about it, she also mentioned that literally, because, Scorpio, Pluto rules the reproductive organs, Scorpio does. She mentioned that biological puberty began occurring much earlier when Pluto reached Scorpio, the fast end of the cycle. And if you, if you think back, because her book is pretty old, relatively speaking. And so when she wrote this, Pluto was in Scorpio. And so, I thought that was very interesting. And that's, if you think about it, I mean, that happens, girls are reaching puberty much, much earlier now. And it was triggered, she feels, by that Scorpio cycle. Yeah.
I just heard someone I know very closely commenting, and I was trying to figure out. So this is good feedback. We will return. We are going to take a brief break for those that would like to call us, and we would love to receive any comments, or if you have any questions for either Suzie Kerr-Wright or for myself. This is the number 373-5527. That's area code 425, and the number is 373-5527. Talk Cosmos. We'll be right back. Thank you. While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the yin period of Scorpio, traditionally ruled by Mars, now ruled by Pluto. By departing a cycle based on comparison between extreme energies, finding balance, Scorpio commits a relationship to exchange resources, experiencing power and powerlessness for the purpose of soul growth transformation. As a fixed water sign that is extreme, intense, and secretively deep, Scorpio's passionate nature questions the psychology and mystery concerning life and death.
Celebrate your star energy blessings. Schedule a natal astrology chart consultation with Talk Cosmos host Sue Rose Minahan. You'll learn to better understand what personally fuels your soul's seed direction. Sue focuses on your questions to connect you into your unique heart's desire and your true soul path's birth essence. Just $125 for an hour-and-a-half session about your life energies and significant current transits, including a recording and a copy of your chart. Schedule by emailing info@talkcosmos.com. That's info@talkcosmos.com.
Hello, this is Sue Rose Minahan of Talk Cosmos. I want to encourage you to log on to 1150kknw.com. That's 1150kknw.com right now and fill out the 2018 KKNW Listener Survey. Your responses will help the station better tailor itself to your needs. As an added incentive, when you fill out the survey, you have a chance to win round-trip passage on the Victoria Clipper to Victoria, BC, plus a $100 gift certificate to Schwartz Brothers Restaurants. So log on to 1150kknw.com for your chance to win. Thank you for all your past listenership and for helping us improve this station. Great prizes might be yours, but you must fill out the survey. One lucky person's name will be drawn on November 6th, so log on to 1150kknw right now and fill out the survey. Complete contest rules can be found at 1150kknw.com. So log on for all the details.
Salutations from space. This is storyteller Gemini Brett, and you're listening to Talk Cosmos on Alternative Talk 1150 AM, where we peek through the veil at astrology's ancient archetypes.
Hi, Sue Rose Minahan again. That number, if you want to call in, 425-373-5527, and talk to Suzie Kerr-Wright of Tennessee, evolutionary astrologer, medium, and talk host, in Tennessee, and myself as we talk about Scorpio, Unveiling Death's Mask. So we will continue. We were just chatting and reminding ourselves about truth. Scorpio wants truth. It wants the truth of the matter. And a lot of that actually has about betrayal of our own self. That's what I was thinking is that we can sometimes, through our thoughts about how looking at unwanted circumstances that happen to us, we might want to linearly think, oh, that's an external issue of somebody that's causing us a problem. But if we really analyze or psychoanalyze.
Psychoanalyze.
Thank you. Yes, that's right. My tongue and my thought. We realize that the depth of the truth might be that we're betraying our own truth, where it may be a trigger that has to do about fears of so many things, loss or betrayal, that really, once we realize that it's just the evolution of life itself, the soul growth is really the bottom line that we want.
Yeah. And that's the thing, that's the carrot at the end of the stick again, it's like, as people go through these rebirths, or these transformative pieces and parts of their lives, it's like most people come through them and get to that kind of, like, just again, going back to that analogy, going from 8th house stuff to 9th house stuff, they go through it and they come through it with a deeper knowing, and that's really where the gold is, because, again, it's tough to look at this stuff, when you're going through tough times with Pluto and or Scorpio energy, it's like it can feel like you are physically dying. It can feel like you're drowning. It can feel like you will not survive, but you will. And as long as you're willing to see the truth about yourself. And so, yeah, and like you were saying, it's like, where are we betraying ourselves? And, in the AA, 12-step programs, there's a statement that says, a part of a 12-step program is taking what's called a fearless and thorough moral inventory, meaning you look at your stuff, you look at where you screwed up. And it says, if we're fearless and thorough in our moral inventory, we will come to know a new freedom and a new happiness. It's amazing what happens when you are willing to look honestly, fearless and thorough. That's how you have to be through these type of transits, or these, when you're dealing with Pluto. And so, because it just demands, you can't gloss over this stuff anymore. You just can't. So, when people come at us with different things and we feel like we're being victimized, it's like you got to keep looking in. You got to keep looking in. And it really is. I mean, you don't have to. You can go do what you want because, hey, we all have free will, right? But, the way I look at it, or, I don't know if this is what we talked about earlier, but it's that horrible medicine that we have to take to save our lives.
Well, there is alchemy and healing in that process, and a matter of looking at where we're aligning ourselves, and the truth of the matter of because we only have power over ourselves. That's really where the bottom line is. I know for my own self, with so many, and I think that is a lot of AA itself is that it tells you, you only have power over yourself. You can't change everybody else.
Yep.
But you can make your own choices. And actually that's what Venus is doing right now too, even though, and of course, along with this change or this whole process. So I'm thinking of the power of Pluto and Scorpio and healing, and that it is really the shamanic. I think that's where the shamanic energies.
Yes, it is. It is. You got to go deep. You got to go underground. You got to go as deep as you can go and come back with the knowledge and the wisdom. And and I mean, and we were talking about where it's back in Libra now, where Venus is back in Libra right now, related to just everything that's going on now. We're looking at, well, even when it was in Scorpio, I mean, of course, jealousy, betrayal. It's like that last gasp and and those losses. And also the difference between, like, Pluto and Scorpio know the difference between intimacy and sex.
Mm-hmm.
Big difference. And I found this quote, and I don't know who said it. I apologize, whoever said it, but it said, I think it was just a meme and it didn't have a name on it, but it said to have someone understand your mind is a different kind of intimacy. So, intimacy is literally connecting with another human being. It's such a deep level, sex is sex, and we get those two confused all the time. And, that is a Scorpio thing,
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's that actual union of exchange, and so it's very powerful and very important. But to embody, to incorporate this intimate, this self, this vulnerable, when I think about some of these words, it brings me back to the trine of the water sign of Cancer, where you allow, you vulnerable. I mean, to be vulnerable is partly the sensitivities of Cancer. And so it develops that depth of exchange where there's meaningfulness, which connects in. I was thinking too that in today's world there's so much polarization. And what is the polarization? The polarization could be looked upon as a difference between the physical, the wanting more power of that energy versus this incorporation that seems to be picking up more on a global scale of people reaching into their psyches and transmuting and finding the spiritual growth and their soul growth, and teaching and being shamans or being in so many elements, in so many different styles of sharing. I mean, we're talking astrology, and you've brought in tarot, and then you do Reiki, and there's also people that do on and on, many levels of sharing. But but these two clash so that there is a lot of aggravation, not just aggravation, but that is creating a lot of the intensities of power and loss of power, through those two. Am I making sense?
Yeah, and well, it reminds me of, there a lot of people have, just use the example, since we're talking about Scorpio and all that, the sexual abuse. The thing about it is people deal with that in so many different ways, right? You have the people that deny it. You have the people that, spend their lives playing out that, putting themselves in dangerous situations so they can keep proving to themselves that they're not a victim. And, but basically, and then, other people who just live in the victim mentality, and there's a balance in there somewhere, and but for a lot of people, it's about like really owning, the ones that it's kind of like the ones that are that push it aside or whatever. As they become more aware, they have to learn how to own their victimhood first before they can heal. And on the flip side, the ones that stay in victimhood have to kind of come back to their sense of power and prove to themselves that they have power over themselves. And so everything's out of whack and out of balance right now. It's crazy. It's like this world is insane at the moment. and so there's a lot of people that are out there that it's like running around with a little bit of information and not knowing what to do with it.
Well, when you speak of victim, that brings me to the other triad, because there's the water signs. There's all these elements. There's water,
Pisces.
earth, and it's Pisces, which only is because, not that it has to be at all. Everything has its pros and its, every single sign. But this is where there is this wonderful sense of the last. We're jumping here to the last archetype, but that is where one is conscious of the universe, the whole universe. Well,
yes.
One is not in. There's no control over the universe. We don't tell the sun when to rise. We don't tell the moon to stop doing the tides. And so there is this wisdom, this knowledge, this just innate ability to realize that the world operates in this marvelous perfection of that it is. But on the other hand, it can infiltrate if we don't. It really requires. It goes back to this internal. The power is internal. We have our choices. We have our values. We have our emotions, and so pulling this together rather than, external things can prompt an emotion with us, but yet it's not their cause. It's something that's inside of us, and it could be our something in our own soul growth that needs to be attention, that wants our value, and that's where we can just shift from thinking from the victim to realizing, how do we find our power? And it can be in so many ways, whether it's through the deep work of going underneath, finding out what the motives and what the purpose, and accepting what other
I'm sorry, go ahead. What others
well, no,
what?
exactly. No, I think we connected that with others.
Yeah, you were just making me think. Sorry, I get so excited. I'm a Scorpio. I'm intense, and it's Sag that makes me interrupt people. So sorry.
No, you're fine.
I have an excuse. Blame it on my rising. Anyways, what you were making me think of is the it's kind of like, oh my God, I just completely lost my train of thought now. So spacey.
Well, first of all, don't even mind. We had connected, and I too. We have a wonderful way of talking, and I realize that we're on the air, so you're being. But anyway, we'll get back to our point, and that is, so not to worry. But we were talking about what were we talking about? All of a sudden, we're jumping. Well, that's okay. It's a deep subject. It's a deep subject, and it does take processing, and so therefore, it's not just so easy to always come up with other things. But the victim. We were talking about the victim and empowering ourselves through the changes. A cult means changes. So, and it's like you said, it's a many-stepped things.
Well, I remember what I was going to say now.
Good.
It's the intuitive piece of Scorpio. There is such a deep knowing and intuition inherent in Scorpio. And because of that, what I think where possibly a lot, where many of us are getting confused is intuition is just a guide. It just points us. It doesn't actually have the information, of what to do. So people are experiencing this intuitive knowing something is happening. I am changing. The world is changing. Things are changing at a deep level, but they haven't connected to that higher sense of self, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know how that's split up. I don't have the words for it, but they haven't figured out what to do with it. That's where I was going with that, because this is all about right now knowing that you know that you know. And I mean, on a very mundane level, not mundane, but on a slightly different level, think of all the people that are experiencing like these relationship dramas that are going on now. It's unbelievable. And people coming back into their lives, of course, that always happens during a Venus retrograde. And, and what they're getting to see is the truth, but they don't know necessarily how to take that first or next step. But their awareness is there now.
Oh, it's perfect. Well, awareness is huge. And that's really, I'm reminded, why we get this new perspective, or this new assessment, you might say, or new view. And with a retrograde, always, life just is always offering us this. And really, it brings it back to the fact of, again, life isn't always A to B. There's this quantum factor of mixed of energies collaborating, and so that is very intuitive. In fact, earlier on, just before the break, you were saying that you were going to mention a few things that people could do. Do you have that list of things?
I
Good.
do.
Let's bring that up.
And I want to inject a little more humor here from Kim Rogers Gallagher, because she talks about, in one of her books, about the Pluto kit that you should have for when you're facing a difficult Pluto transit. And this is the list of things that should be in your kit: pomegranates, dark glasses, a black trench coat, a flashlight, a surgical kit, fertilizer, a book on death and dying, scary movies, and she recommends things like Arachnophobia, an atom bomb, an illustrated book on spiders and snakes, and 1 year's worth of free therapy.
Definitely, yes. That's.
She nailed it.
Yeah. Well, humor, it's really, they say laughter is the best medicine. So yes.
But I actually made a list here of, basically like a little more serious, I guess you could call it, key to surviving a Pluto transit, the death, Scorpio transit, any of those intense things like we're going through now. And the key, of course, we've touched on a lot of these already, is to just first and foremost let go. And what does that mean? It means let go of your expectations, let go of the attachment to the outcome in things. Okay. Another thing that's important to do during this time is release all doubt and fear. And oh yeah, that sounds so simple, doesn't it? But the way you start to do that is stop replaying things over and over and over in your head. It's about like, resisting that or letting go of the obsession, because whatever, you can't resist it, because what we resist persists. Yeah. So, let go of the obsession, and letting go is a choice. You have to believe that and know it. And repeat after me: I have no control over people and situations. We touched on that. So really internalizing that and repeating that over and over. Control what you can. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change things I can, the wisdom to know the difference, right? That's really important. Control what you can, which is basically your own actions. You can't control your thoughts, but what you do with them is something you can control, how you act on them. Do you keep letting them run around in your head and just take up headspace? Acknowledge them. You have to acknowledge them and then let them go. Also, one of the things that you can do is begin to visualize your life as you like to see it. Know that you're not having to experience this time, know that you're not having to experience this time or trial. We touched on this earlier, but that you get to experience it for your own higher good. And things that you can do, really simple things. Do a lot of mindfulness practices, a lot of mindfulness meditations, and that's about staying in the moment. Feel your feet on the floor, notice the sounds, the smells, the body sensations in any moment, right where you are. And that calms the mind. And it keeps that, because again, Scorpio, Pluto, it's all about obsession, obsession, obsession. I want, I gotta have, I'm not gonna have, um, and above and beyond all, just be nice to yourself. These are, things are tough out there, and and acceptance is what you mentioned that a couple of times. The acceptance, this is also from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I'm disturbed, it's because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me, and I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it's supposed to be in this moment.
That is excellent. A whole itinerary, not just itinerary, but really it reminds me, it just steps on the strengths of the other archetypes that are the water archetypes, both Cancer, letting go, and Pisces, knowing what you have no control over, but going back to the strength of Scorpio that does take control, but knowing what to take control of, therefore,
Mm-hmm.
and also centering with the spirit, going within and allowing that unknown quality of the spirit that one can experience. We that's really the beauty of it, is that we can sort of learn about it from other factors, but until we actually sit down or just let ourselves experience, then we know, and then we have that depth, that magnetic self that Scorpio really
Absolutely
creates. Mm-hmm.
And the other piece of work that I do constantly, all the time, is mediumship, and so just, I mean, believe me or not, whatever, there is life beyond this planet. There is life beyond this physical body. It exists. I speak to it constantly. So, this isn't all or nothing. And that's so Scorpio and Pluto. It's all or nothing, all or nothing. It's not. It's not. It's transformation. We continue on. And I, in all the years I've been doing mediumship here, it's just blown me away how much more peace I have around the process of life and death, and what we know is the physical death. I'm so not afraid to die. I'm kind of worried about how I might die, because Scorpios usually die pretty miserable deaths, but that's erased. That's actually not true. It's a joke. It's an old, I started studying astrology back in the 70s, and that kind of stuff was in books back then. You will die a painful death. But yeah, a little worried about how I might, but not worried about the actual crossing over. It really, yeah. So life goes on. We survive.
Well, that is really a great energy to prevail, because again, it's that ether, as it's called, or the spiritual aspects of how it gets manifested, the energy that we can talk about, but until we experience in any shape or form. I mean, so often I know that when one does meditate, and might have, in the process of just being, have a desire, a thought, that the answer will come at some point. Now, that's just on one mundane level, but in many, many ways, this manifestation happens. And so it's that cycle. I think I'm trying to relate to what you're saying, just on many, many levels, that we do. And I so thank you for acknowledging, that fact that life has essence that remains. It's
yes,
and it is really a matter of learning how, if in any sense of whether we leave a job or whether we leave a city or whether we have a family divorce or a marriage or a death or an illness, over and over, just the facts of the decay of some physicality that happens, And again, as you say, whether it's emotion or dreams or anything that just didn't go the way we wanted, and we have to go through that huge metamorphosis of a new process. It's like the butterfly. There is going to be a life. We may not know the whole, like you said, the expectations, what it'll be, because if we do, we're really looking behind, like has been said. That's going to give us the view of what was, not of what will be. So we need to let go.
Yeah, when I coach people through this process of really huge situations coming on, they often say, "I want to get back to me," and I'm like, "No, there is no back to you. It's all new now. Let's look forward. Let's keep moving, eyes front. Where you going? It's all good. It's all good. You'll get there." Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, I find that's very important, and I do find that loving what was and just embracing that and letting it be and knowing it was a stepping stone and the whole growth process is so valuable. I think maybe that's where one reflects on the passing of someone. One remembers all the events. Well, Suzie, thank you so much. Next week we're having Alan Clay, who wrote Sedna Consciousness, and he is an author from New Zealand. Tonight we had Suzie Kerr-Wright of Tennessee. Go to Talk Cosmos, see our guests. We love all of you. Thank you so much for listening, and it's just been great, Suzie.
Thank you so much for having me on. This is awesome. I love talking to you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and guests unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness. Be sure to tune in next Saturday at 6 p.m. to continue finding your roots in the stars.
The preceding audio was via a Skype call.